Now, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain. First off, it's free. I'm not joking, you guys. The Anchor app, it is free to use. Second, there's creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Now that's awesome, isn't it? Third, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere, you guys, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and so many more platforms. Fourth, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum relationship. Now, is that awesome, you guys, or what? That's just terrific. And finally, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So I have another podcast with Anchor, and I'm just loving Anchor so much. I love it. It's so very easy to use, guys. So why don't you download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. What's up, you guys, and welcome to the official podcast of Damian Talks Education. So listen up. I am here to talk about all things education on my podcast. So get prepared for some realness and honesty of education as I walk you down through various of topics that's happening in the education world with some amazing guests, to sharing stories relating to education and so much more, because I got you covered with education. So join me on this journey of education with me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Damian Talks Education. Thank you for joining me on this special episode of Damian Hears You, a conversation on being a Black man in America. So now, in response to several high-profile deaths of African Americans in recent months now, some Black people are saying that enough is enough. So there needs to be some change that needs to happen now. So as protests continue around the world, around the country, against systematic racism and police brutality, Black Americans describe fear and their anger and their wariness about tragic killings that are becoming all too familiar right now. So joining me today to have a powerful conversation on what it means to be a Black man in America today is my good friend Andrew Frett, who's the co-host of Future Educators Talk and is the host of Frett's Education Thoughts, and Mr. Brandon Morrison, who is an elementary educator in North Carolina, where he has worked there for the past 6 years in the upper elementary grades. And later on into the episodes, I'll have more guests joining me. So welcome, you guys. Thank you guys for coming on for this episode.
Glad to be here.
So my first question to you guys, I want to know is, what was your first reaction when you saw the video of the white cop kneeling on George Floyd's neck while he was saying, "I can't breathe"? I'm gonna start with you, Mr. Morrison. What was your first reaction when you first saw it?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to, again, thank you for even the opportunity. I'm glad to be here. With this whole quarantine thing, I felt distant from everyone. So, it's good to be able to talk in real time to people. I will say it took me probably a couple days to watch the video. I read an article, I saw a lot of posting, but I think George Floyd was one of a few that have happened in the past 8 weeks. And so to deal with so many of them popping up in an 8-week period, it was just not only further traumatizing, but more exhausting. Just to just to have to put yourself through this again because you know that there's another man who has lost his life, another Black man, someone who looks like you that has lost his life, and the one initial thought that pops in your head is that could have been me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next initial thought may be, well, what's the situation? And you know, you want to get all of these details, but at the end of the day, you know, there's nothing that can justify it. It's just, you start going into all of these different modes. And so it's been an emotional struggle for the past few weeks that started with, you know, reading the article, seeing the video and things of that sort and kind of connecting it to saying, oh, there's another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Andrew? What did you think of this when you first saw this happening?
Well, first and foremost, I didn't see the video until, you know, a couple of days later. It was actually trending on Twitter when I first heard the story, and I'm just basically shaking my head at this point because really another one, you know, just comes after Breonna Taylor. You know, I'm just like, are you serious? What needs to be done in order to stop this? What needs to be done? So, and now I'm scared because, like Mr. Morrison said, it could happen to anyone.
Absolutely.
So I'm honestly scared every time I go to work, every morning. You know, because you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And joining us now is Dr. DeMarcus McMillan, who applied to the Harvard University doctorate program to study the Black males in the American educational system, where he studied the perspective of African American male educators and the ways in which Black male students are positioned in schools and in life. So thanks for joining today, Dr.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry, just a correction. It was Howard University.
Yes, thank you. My bad.
No problem.
I want to ask you this. What was your first reaction when you saw the video of the white cop kneeling on George Floyd's neck? What was your first reaction when you saw it?
I had so many actual first thoughts, but initially, I think the George Floyd video was the first video that we have from beginning to end, right? Mm-hmm. So we have, you know, video of Mike Brown and things like that. And oftentimes we know that people who just don't believe that there is institutional or systemic racism, they try to always say, you know, well, what happened before the police did that? What happened after? See, there's no question in this particular situation because we actually have not only one or two videos, 3 videos from beginning to end. We have a Black man who has his hands already in cuffs, so he wasn't necessarily resisting. So there's no question in my mind that this was an execution. For 8 minutes or 46 seconds, this man, Chauvin, the police officer, has his knee on this Black man's neck. That's a problem. So it just brought back so many memories of how these things happen from beginning to end. And I think with George Floyd, for many of us, and the reason why it received so much attention and the reason why it received so much public outcry is because there is no question of what happened in this video at all. So those are my initial thoughts. I'm sorry. Can y'all hear me? I'm outside. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So my thoughts on this when I first saw this, like, okay, so if you're a white person, you probably murder a horrific saying, "Oh my God," while you were shaking your head at this cruel injustice. Now, if you're Black like we are, you probably leapt to your feet, you cursed out, and maybe you threw something saying, not the F again, that this is happening. And so then you remember the two white predators accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery as he jogged through the neighborhood back in February. And now, if it wasn't for that video emerging a few weeks back, they would have I believe that they would have gotten away with it. And then now you have those Minneapolis cops, they claim that George Floyd was resisting arrest at that time. But a store video, they show that he wasn't. He was not. And how the cop on Floyd's neck, on George Floyd's neck, wasn't an enraged redneck stereotype, but a sworn-in officer who looked calm. He looked very calm, and he entitled a devoted epitome. So that's my thoughts on what I just, because like if what I said earlier, if you're probably like was saying like, oh my gosh, this is happening, but you're Black, you probably leapt up to your feet and saying, why is this happening again to us? Of the cops targeting on us Black men. I just don't understand. I just really don't understand. So I just want to ask you, Andrew, what do you think, what conversations should we be having with our white friends about talking about Black Lives Matter?
Well, first and foremost, let me add to something that you just said.
Yeah.
I think the police officers in Minneapolis, I think they don't have any feelings for us. I feel like they're doing this for attention, and I feel like they're higher rank than us. That's why they think they can get away with it. But again, with the videos and stuff like that, it could bite you in the face. It really will. So if you think you're high ranking and such, just wait until all the proof comes out. So
Absolutely with that. So what do you think, what conversations that we should be having with our white friends during this time talking about Black Lives Matter? What do you think the conversations that we should be having with them?
honestly, to show how I feel, show how we feel, what we deal with every single day, what we go through, how they can basically white privilege. We don't have privilege. So I think we need to have the talk with them to see if they can understand of what we're going through, what we, and etc. So I think that's a good conversation that we should be having with our white friends.
Absolutely. What about you, Mr. Brandon? What do you think the conversations we should be having with them?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is that I'm not seeking conversations with them. One, I think this has really allowed me to, I guess if you're looking for any type of silver lining, it's allowed me to filter through people who I may have considered friends. And so I appreciate that piece, because I hit dogs holler, and, I for lack of better terms, but, I think the more I call out and the more people respond, I'm able to filter through and see where your thinking is. Because you're not as reserved now that you see that there's a larger group, that we may have Black Lives Matter movement. We may have organizations that are, grassroots organizations or national organizations that are really, speaking out, as well as just, citizens. But to kind of see how when I say something and how someone thinks that they have enough comfortability with me to be able to speak exactly how they really feel, to contradict, and to, try to find ways to, discredit my own feelings and my own experience. It's an eye-opening thing, but I'm grateful for that. But I think the conversations that I have had are for those who are really seeking to learn, and they may want to run. They know I'm not the spokesperson for all Black people and for the entire Black experience, but they trust me enough to be honest with them, but also say, this is where you may want to start. Because sometimes just Googling things doesn't work. With media and the way that things are portrayed, sometimes the top results are always going to be the sensationalized experience and not really getting down to it. And so, I may direct them to, someone who I feel like is more, knowledgeable, who is more active, and who I feel like may be able to set things in a way that me through my emotions may not be able to. But I use myself as sort of like a key to. But again, as I said at the beginning, I don't seek out to have those conversations with people necessarily very often, because I don't think that it's the oppressed responsibility to educate the oppressor on what they're doing, because I think most people are aware in most cases. And if you seek out to gain any knowledge from me, or you just want to hear my voice, I'm willing to share it to an extent. But no, I don't think it's my responsibility to go through it and then try to say, hey, this is what I'm going through, when they're the ones doing it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense right there. So what about you, Dr. DeMarcus? What's any concerns about what conversations we should be having with our white friends, talking about Black Lives Matter and racism?
Yeah, I don't want to be long-winded, but I think there's several conversations we do need to have with our white friends. I do believe that a lot of white people just don't believe that racism exists. We have to understand that racism, as Black people, we need to understand this. Racism really should be white people's problem and not ours. Think about what I just said. Racism really shouldn't be our problem. It should be their problem. Think about the history, which a lot of our white friends don't know. A lot of white people didn't know about Juneteenth. So there's just conversations around education, I think, that needs to take place. And racism exists. So one of the things that I initiated several conversations with my white friends is just teaching them about systemic racism, teaching them from every aspect of American life. For Black people, there is an injustice. Education, housing, employment, healthcare, I can keep going down the line. There is an injustice for Black people in every facet of American life. And because many white people are privileged, they don't see that. One thing that we know from being privileged is that people who are privileged don't see the other side. They don't consider the other side. Privilege is rooted in selfishness. It's all about self, and not worried about the others. I mean, slavery in and of itself was just outright evil, but more so selfish. So just teaching them about systemic racism, teaching them about how we got to this point. You will be surprised about how many white people simply just are ignorant, let's be very clear, about how we even got to this point. They are victims of miseducation, just like a lot of us are. I went to a predominantly white high school, and I sat in the same classrooms they sat in. And when you get to slavery, it's literally one paragraph in the textbook. they got the same information that I got because I'm sitting right there, not knowing about the, all of the nuances of slavery until I went to a historically black college and university and really got the information that I needed and the education that I needed to be more so informed. So I think that we really have to sit down with our white friends and teach them about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is not saying that just Black Lives Matter. We're saying that all lives should matter and that Black lives matter too. And the way that I put it is, if everybody's sitting at a table eating food, if all of us right on this call right now were sitting at a table eating food, and Damian, you didn't get food, you're not gonna say everybody deserves food. No, you're literally gonna say Damian deserves food. I deserve food. Why? Because everybody else is at the table eating. Everybody else is being taken care of. You're the one that's being deprived of the basic necessities of life. So therefore, just explaining to them, because they simply don't understand. When we say Black Lives Matter, well, some people, when we say Black Lives Matter, you have to put that into context. We're talking about us as Black people who have been enslaved for 246 years, oppressed for 400 years, from 1619 to 2020. They don't understand that. So that's the conversation we need to have. We need to start with education first.
And I just wanted to chime in on that from Dr. McMillan. I think is it Jane Elliott? She's a professor that teaches a lot about race, but she said something in a video I watched a couple of days ago where she said that the education system in the United States especially is indoctrination of white supremacy. So we're taught as we go K through 12 that, I call it the superhero syndrome. Like white people have scoured the world and liberated all of the people. And, we should thank them and we should, lift our forefathers up and things of that sort. And slavery was something bad, but it's all better now, and so we're taught that. And, even myself, it wasn't until I went to North Carolina A&T State University that I really got immersed into different forms of thought from people that look like me. And, it was like I saw unicorns or anomalies. And, I wanted to mimic myself after those, leaders, but we were always taught that it was a few of them in the past and they did something and somebody killed them. That was it. And I even think now when I taught fifth grade, I'm going back to fifth grade, but my county has purchased a program that, is an English program where they do like research projects. And the last research project in fifth grade is the Civil War. And they have to read about influential Civil War characters. The only Black person is Harriet Tubman. So out of this entire war, out of this entire social situation that led up to the war, for hundreds of years, the only Black person you choose is Harriet Tubman because they've tried to babyfy her and they've tried to dumb down her history, and they try to dumb down Black history to the point where you have a few strong leaders that stood up against oppression, but they never focus on who was the oppressor and how is that oppression still continued 100 years later. And so, with that, it is that part about a lot of them are literally miseducated, purposefully miseducated, and they're caring about their lives in what I consider a terrarium, where they see what's outside of the glass, but everything they need, the entire structure has been placed to give them everything they need inside that glass. And so they don't have to worry about what's outside until situations like this happen where we have protests and marches and people saying, okay, it's done for. And so now they're faced with the reality because we're trying to shatter that glass. And so when you keep hearing that ding, ding, ding on the glass, you have no choice but to pay attention. And I think that's why this moment is so special to me and so, so important to actually, putting forth what I seek to do in my classroom every day, but on a grand scale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So just joining in now is Darrell Jerome, who's a first-year history teacher in Florida. So thanks for joining in. we was just talking about what conversations should we be having with our white friends about talking to them about Black Lives Matter, about racism. And I want to hear from you, like, what do you think? Is there any conversations that we should have with them?
I think he may have dropped back out.
Back out.
Yeah, it looked like his
Oh, yeah.
reception was kind of bad, and I think it might have dropped him.
Okay. So moving on, and I want to hear from all of you with this here. And I was just thinking about this quite the other day, actually. Do you think, and I want to hear your honest opinion, do y'all think white families to discuss how to interact with the police and how to avoid suspicions than Black families are having? And if so, do they even know how to do this? Start with.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Of course. So I want to know: do you guys think white families are sitting down with their children to discuss how to interact with the police officers and how to avoid suspicions than with Black families are having? And if so, do they even know how?
I saw this. I saw it was either a tweet or a tweet shared on Facebook, and to kind of summarize it, it was basically like for students who may have grown up in a predominantly white area, a lot of times we notice things sometimes that were illegal. Like I think about in high school, after prom. My first prom, I was only 17 years old, but to go to a friend's house who was a white friend whose parents freely let them drink after prom, it was shocking to me. And luckily for me, I didn't go into a very large high school where we had issues with like drugs and abuse and things like that. But I was aware of those things. And the tweet basically said that a lot of the things that we see that are illegal or people get off for that are white, it's because that's a regular Friday evening for them as they grew up. And so I don't think white parents have to teach their children how to, interact with police because they're a part of the system that has protected them from persecution since its inception. So, when we talk about policing, I've seen where there's situations, where you see people who aren't Black get out of their cars as soon as they get stopped and go irate. And I've seen them tussle with police officers. Never once has that little clip that's holding his gun ever popped off. And they're trying to de-escalate the situation. And I think that's what they're used to. And that's why I think that's part of the reason why I think some of my former friends who were definitely unfriended, forgive me, I just didn't have the energy to try to educate at the moment. But I think that's why some of them always look for something wrong. What did this person not do that led to their death? It's never anything that has to do with the system. It's never anything that has to do with the profiling or the bias. It's never has to do with the hatred. It's always, what did this Black or brown person do that led to their death? And then I saw another tweet where someone said, well, Breonna Taylor was asleep.
Really?
So it's like, what could she have done wrong that led to her death, where you're trying to find a reason to consistently justify why we're dying at the hands of police or why the system, constantly keeps picking us out. And you have to come to the realization, if you actually care enough, is that it's because there is racism that's ingrained in every facet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just, I don't um so I want to ask this right here. Um how come Black people today, they care more about white white on black crime than black on black crime? Why do y'all think of that?
Can I jump in? Can I answer that question?
Yes, of course.
So let's let's reimagine, or let's really deeply think about black on black crime, right? The term black on black crime is not a black term. Let's think about that. That was a term that was given to us by white people. And oftentimes when white people bring up black on black crime, it's an argument, or it's, when I say argument, I'm not talking about a feisty argument, but it's their defense mechanism that they go to when we're trying to argue the point of police brutality towards blacks. So let's look at black on black crime, and let's look at it from the paradigm from which I believe it came from. Black on black crime in most instances is still a response to white supremacy, and this is why I believe that. When you deprive a group of people, no matter what the color of their skin is, in this country it's black people. If you study other histories, the Hebrews enslaved the Israelites. In India during Gandhi's time, there was a caste system where there was an oppressed group. Whenever you deprive a group of people of basic human rights, they go into survival mode. What they have done in this country and other countries alike, they have deprived black people from basic necessities such as quality education, quality health care, quality housing, just a whole rack of basic necessities that are not being met. Then what they do is they ghettoize us, which is a Nazism, almost fascist way of looking at how to control a group of people. They ghettoize us, which simply means they confine us to a certain area. Then they surveil us by making sure that police presence is very high in those communities. So we're not getting quality education. We're not getting quality health care. There are food deserts happening in these communities. And then don't get me wrong, we have some structured families, and then we have some broken families. So the fathers may not be there. The father's either dead in prison or dealing with their own spiritual, mental, physical issues. And so there is going to be a breeding ground for crime. And I think the other person who spoke before me, that was a good point that he made, is because crime happens everywhere. It happens in black communities, it happens in white communities, it happens in Asian communities. So why is it that crime is oftentimes reported and found in black communities? It's because we're surveilled more so than any other group. And then also, too, they have made war on people and not on issues. So if you look at Ronald Reagan and what he did with the war on drugs, and we all know as educated black men, it was not a war on drugs. It was a war on the people that used them. So black on black crime is a direct response of white supremacy, because you have a group of people who are deprived and they're going into survival mode. I'm hungry, you're hungry. We're robbing, we're killing. They don't have access to proper mental health. So with the mental health issues too, we got to have that has to be a part of the conversation. You know, how many times have another black man been murdered by somebody who may not necessarily be there mentally, right? So we have to have that conversation. Poverty. We can't have a conversation about black on black crime unless we're having a conversation about poverty and the impacts of poverty and what that looks like and how that impacts our thinking process. So yeah, I think that's the starting point. Whenever somebody brings up black on black crime, we have to look at criminology and how all those things unfold.
Absolutely. Mr. Luther, you want to add anything to that?
I'm in agreement with what everybody's been saying. Because at the end of the day, you know, there's a lot that we got to put out there for everybody they need to learn. Because there's a lot that is not being said and is not being told. You know, even like what the school that I teach at, most of my kids, they low income kids, if that makes sense. But at the end of the day, they're not even understanding what's really going on. You know, like they're like today, you know, it's Juneteenth, but like I asked them, what does Juneteenth mean to you? Like, what do you know about it? And they looking at me like, Mr. L, I'm just going off based off what my peers are going off of. That has to stop. You know, like I told them, we're going to have to really sit down and we're going to have to start educating you all on what's really going on. You know, it's good that you're, you know, we're glad that you're wanting to be a part of something, but you got to know what this really means. And if you're not going to really sit down and understand what was done, you know, for this to happen, that's not a good look. So, it, like he said, it's so much that needs to be talked about, from property to the mental aspects to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I just want to add this of what I think of this. It's not that we don't care about black on black crime, but okay, let me just explain this in more depth. So when a black person commits a crime, they go to jail for it. But when a white person commits a crime, they get off. And maybe they even get arrested. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Ahmaud Arbery, who was a black man, he was chased down and gunned down by two white men in Georgia. And it took us 2 months to arrest them. And the only reason we did that was because we saw the video on tape. Now, imagine like if we didn't have cameras and phones today. That would probably be another story there, maybe. So I think that black on black crime is an issue today. But if you research high violent crimes, they are all interracial. Blacks kill blacks and whites kill whites. But it's not that we, black people, we don't care about it, but it's the same issue with you guys saying, with white people saying, why are y'all saying Black Lives Matter when all lives matter? Okay, well, we totally understand that all lives matter. But right now, I believe right now at this moment, black people, they are dying at the hands of white people. And I myself, I cannot change that. And Andrew, he cannot change that. Brandon, he cannot change that. But only you, my white friends, I'm talking to you guys, only you can change that, is what I believe in. Now, if you want to know how you can truly like help and how you can stand with us and how you can you must first educate yourself. You must educate yourself first of what you're talking about. And you must educate yourself so you know exactly what you are standing for. And most importantly, why are you standing? So that's true. That's what I think.
And I would say it's important for, you know, anyone, I think, who is trying to understand their white privilege and, you know, how systemic racism works, how the structure of the country and pretty much the world is set up. Don't seek the same sources that miseducated you in the first place. So don't look for the same people that have taught you that you are superior. And even if you may have not heard that directly, but through the actions of your environment have taught you that you're superior, don't look to those same places to then teach you the opposite, because they're not going to.
That's very true. And can I add real quick that the system can't, the system cannot repair itself, right? So if the system is infected, right, you can't use the infected system to repair itself. There's an infection. That's why you have a lot of these cities, especially cities like Minneapolis, where they're just thinking about there's no such thing as reforming police. No such thing as police reform, because the system is so rotten to the core, right? The American system itself has been built on the back of slaves and black people, and now more recently Hispanic and undocumented people, to the point to where we can't really have any more conversations about reform. We really just have to reimagine America, and I think that is what white America is so afraid of. That is why we hear these thinly veiled notions and callings of race wars through terms such as "Make America Great Again," which is a resurgence of how America used to be, of how white supremacy ruled, and we have to dominate the streets, and we have to go back to law and order, which those terms were definitely heavily used during the times of slavery. And it wasn't law and order to protect us. It was law and order to protect whites against us. So I definitely agree with that. We cannot go back to those same spaces and places to try to say, now educate me, because those same places may not even have the proper education itself. So I definitely agree.
Now, the other day, I saw this on Twitter, and I don't know if you guys saw this as well, but I saw, again, a white person. He is harassing a group of black teens in a gated community. And I don't know if I could show this to you guys, but I want to hear your reaction to this here.
Is that the one where they were cutting through to go to the store?
I'm not sure.
The sad part is that literally we have so many choices to go from. Is it this video, or is it that video, or is it that one? That's the sad part.
Exactly.
Yeah, because there's so many videos to.
Okay.
What's your name?
I'm not telling you.
I live here. Okay, where do you live?
Why would we tell you any of this?
Where do you live? Where do you live? I'm not telling you. Okay, not a problem. I'm going to call the gate and have you all arrested.
Okay.
You do not deserve to be in here.
Okay.
What did we do?
See, here's the issue.
We're backing up for you. And you say you're going to hit us with the car?
Yeah.
You're going to hit us with the car?
Bring him out right now. Bring him out right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is because you're driving illegally.
Okay, but you're coming out of the car.
Because you're 15 years old, you could marry in Mississippi or Alabama.
This is not Mississippi or Alabama. This is
It's
Florida.
Florida.
Okay. So you're gonna hit us with the car.
Don't stick your hand out. Did you threaten a child? I did not threaten a child.
I have it on video. I have it on video.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did. You have it on video.
I did not.
So, what did y'all think of that right there?
Number one. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what part of Florida it is, because I stay in Florida. I just want to know what part of Florida that's in.
Uh, I'm really not sure where that's it in Florida, actually.
Okay. But I give my
See,
input.
Andrew, did you have something to say?
yeah, my first thing is, why is he harassing them for? Like, they live in a gated community. They can do whatever they want, but you over there harassing them for what? What did they do to you? What, is there a rule in the handbook that you can't do this in the gated community? Like, what is your issue? They were just having a good time, and you just want to ruin the good time. And that's really ticked me off, is because they think they can rule the world. They think they're the boss of everything.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to something I saw I was watching another conversation about defunding the police, and they mentioned the fact that in gated communities and suburbs like that, the police presence isn't very high because the community polices themselves. And so I think it's just a part of white people policing their own areas. And as he said in the video, he believes that they don't deserve to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took it upon himself, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen? That's his mindset. At the end of the day, what's going to happen?
They're going to get
I'm going
arrested.
to tell them to get out of my neighborhood, and then what's going to happen to me? It wasn't until he didn't back down until a grown person came out there to confront him about it. But he felt like he could police the little black children and tell them where to go because that's his neighborhood.
Yeah. And to the point that you brought up, which is a good point, I heard that too when they said you don't deserve to be here, which immediately right then and there, that's a white supremacist way of thinking, right? From the very beginning, right? The Native Americans, the indigenous people of our country, didn't deserve to be there, so I'm gonna take over. 2020, here we are. Here's another white person saying to a group of people who he believes don't deserve it, that you need to get off of this land, and that's not your land. That's not your land, right? So that's just that, and this is an ideology that almost flows through the blood of certain individuals, that they just simply believe that they could take whatever doesn't belong to them. Look at some of our museums. Look at the culture. You know how they take culture and misappropriate it as if it's theirs. Like going back to the museum piece, you go to some of these museums and you're looking like, well, how the hell did they get this stuff? That's because they went and looted, certain places and took it. And, so I just think that this whole situation, the video that you showed me, it is a classic white supremacist, almost white male patriarchy way of thinking, that I should dominate the streets. I own this, even though they don't. And the fact that I even own your life, right? If I choose to take your life, I can take it. And guess what's gonna protect me? Law and order, right? So it's kind of like, for them, they objectify almost everything. Like I heard one argument where, well, let's look at our president for an example. We have football players in the NFL who are standing up for lives, but most people will stand up for a flag, right, before they stand up for the lives of people, right? So they, like, the idolatry of it all is just mind-boggling to me, but it's a classic white supremacist way of thinking.
It reminds me of, what is it, the golden bull in the Bible? How they use the flag as like this idol, of what represents them.
Yeah, and they'll put that above everything else. So we have to be real cautious of that, because that's the white supremacist way of thinking. And one thing about it is, we can all study white supremacy. It hasn't changed. It really hasn't. Over the years, it has just mutated to get the same result, right? Gentrification, that's a white supremacist way of thinking. But white people have been gentrifying things that don't belong to them for thousands of years, right? So when I see stuff like that, that's just gentrification. That's still Christopher Columbus coming to a country saying he discovered something that was already populated by thousands of people. You know, so yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I want to ask you guys, what's your message or advice to fathers of young Black men at this time right now? That you can share.
Well, as a Black father to 3 daughters, because I've been fortunate to have daughters, I don't have a son, but actually, like, Daddy, are you okay? Daddy, why did it take you so long to get home? Daddy, did the police pull you back? Like, if my daughter is 4 years old, ask me that, it hurt. Because the father that has son, you know, that's really in his son's life. What can we really do to train them up so that they can be safe and that they can enjoy what it is that God has given them? That my message to that would just be, just continue to cover them and protect them. Because at the end of the day, God has the final say-so about what's going on. But us as Black fathers that are in the household, we're going to have to take a stand to make sure that all our children are safe and are secure, no matter what it is. You know what I mean? And I'm listening, you know, as we all talking, and it starts with us as men anyway. It starts with us. It starts with us, you know, coming together, letting the young men see that we can all be unified instead of hating on one another. So it's a whole lot of routes that we can go. You know, that's me talking as a father. That's me talking to my daughters right now, letting them know that at the end of the day, Daddy is okay, but I'm here to protect if anything happens. I'm going to make sure that I protect you and keep you secure.
That's kind of like what my father did before he passed. He wanted to make sure that everyone is okay. He wanted to make sure that everyone is good. And he wants the best out of us. He wanted us to be educated and, you know, would take his wisdom into action. And so that's why I'm like kind of like tearing up right now. It's because that's what he did before he passed away. So, you know.
And it just, I don't know, because with me, like, my daughter is 4. So I took my daughter to one of the top private schools here, and it pissed me off because my daughter scored high on the entrance exam. You understand what I'm saying? So I didn't want her to go to VPK. She's kindergarten ready. And, you know, they had the nerve to tell me, well, she scored real high in reading and real high with her sight words, but due to her, you know, her birthday, we're not going to be able to promote her to kindergarten. But it was a kid in at the same age as my daughter was, and y'all let him go to kindergarten. But I kept my composure, and, you know, I was professional about it. And my daughter was like, Daddy, why? She was like, I scored very high. I was like, baby, that's just how the world is. I said, but at the end of the day, I said, did you see how calm Daddy was? She said, yes, sir. I said, did you see Daddy slash out in any type of way? She said, no, sir. I said, I had to be strong for you, and I had to be strong for myself. I said, but this is the world that we live in. I said, they don't want you to be here. I had to tell her straight up. And my daughter, she literally went to the lady and was like, why? Why don't you want me to be here? And I scored high on my test. So how do you think that made me feel?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna add to, and I think what everybody said is excellent and accurate. So I didn't have my father growing up at all. So I'm gonna come at it from that angle. First of all, being present is key to just being what you need to be for your children. But then I just strongly believe that your father should be that male role model before anybody else, in my opinion. That's just me. Some people say, when you ask like little children who their role model is, they'll say things like Dr. Martin Luther King, and they'll say things like Malcolm X, and these are people they don't know. These are people they never met. These are people that they just heard from other people or books or movies, whatever the case might be. When I strongly believe that the black man that's in the house should be that living representation of a model of what the children should see. Like when you were talking about your 3 young girls, like they look up to their father of what a black man should be, and also too, I just believe that as fathers, we should be priests of our households, making sure that we are not just providing, but we're actually leading, we're actually teaching, we're actually instilling morals in our children, and also making sure too that that they know the truth about the world. Letting our children know what the world is really like, and how we should navigate those spaces, just like you were saying about just how you modeled yourself through that situation. And a lot of us, just to be transparent, a lot of us as black people don't have that. I know I didn't have my father, and I wish I had the statistics in front of me about how many black children don't have their fathers. So for Father's Day, for me, it's a somber day, because I know that I grew up without a father, and everything that I wanted as far as a role model living in the house, I necessarily didn't have in a male figure. So that's something that we should just think about as we're moving forward into Father's Day.
And I think it's, I'm not a father. I teach black boys and black children, but they go home to their parents when the day ends. But I just wanted to chime in very quickly and say these are the voices and the stories that often go untold. We don't hear, and it's not because they're not there. We just aren't, the black father voices aren't getting pushed out. And so I think it can open some people's eyes and appeal to at least some of the white parents, when they realize that when they are raising their children, they're raising their children to be successful, to hopefully not do anything stupid, to follow their dreams and passions. But then as a black father, as a black parent, you have to raise your kid to do that. But then there's this other layer. There's this other set of responsibilities where you have to teach them to survive in a world that's geared against them. And so it's like, I think some white parents would understand a little bit more if they heard from black parents saying, hey, yeah, I want my child to pursue all that they want, but also I have to inform them that there is a system in every department, from education to housing to law enforcement, anywhere that they choose to pursue, there's always something that is there that they're going to have to battle through, and you don't have to teach that to your child. So I think it's important to get those voices and those stories out as we progress and fight for justice, is to understand that this is 2020 and people are raising another generation that 20 years down the road, we don't want to have to teach their children the same things that were taught to us and that we're having to teach them, because it still hasn't changed.
Yeah. So that's the time I have for today with this conversation. This was a really great discussion with you guys. Really appreciated. Learned a lot from you all. So thanks for sharing your input of what you are feeling at this time. So, yeah. Is there anything that you guys would like to add in?
My last statement is just that the time is now. We need to really, really reimagine every facet of American life because we may not get this moment again, right? So in the school system, I'm gonna just be very upfront. I don't know how to lie. I don't know how to do that. So I'm gonna just tell the truth. We're not providing social justice through education. We need to really redo schools. We need to look at the curriculum. We need to look at how we're going to recreate the curriculum to teach truth and not just a school system that is meant for social reproduction. As Black people, we can't keep reproducing and keeping the status quo for racism and white supremacy to prevail. We have to stop looking at schools as being social reproduction factories, but look at schools as change agents. How can we use education for liberation? Because without liberation, there is no education. We cannot confuse knowledge with education. Not all knowledge is providing liberation for me. So therefore, because we do know back in slavery times that slaves had knowledge, right? We can look at Negro spirituals and tell they knew about the Bible, they knew about Moses, they knew about all these things, but they knew about it from white supremacist standpoint. So in the school system, we really have to reimagine how are we going to provide education for our children, looking at the curriculum, looking at how we discipline our children, looking at how we respond to the discipline. Do we have police officers in school? Police officers who are supposed to be law enforcement, when we know historically that the laws that were created, even the police themselves, were not created for Black people from the very inception. We have to look at what our teachers are teaching and their philosophies, right? If we have teachers, and this goes for white or Black, because it's almost equal across the board, there are a lot of Black faces in high places that are not for Black children. So we have to really rethink a lot of different things, and the time is now. If we don't, because I think right now the moment is more so focused on law enforcement and police reform and things like that. But my argument is it starts with education at some point, because at the end of the day, these people just didn't come up with these beliefs and philosophies on their own. These things had to be taught to them. So how do we break the cycle through education? Are we going to look at standardized testing? My belief is that you cannot standardize unstandardized people. So if you got a group of white people who are coming up with standardized tests, trying to label or try to create these tests and give them to all different groups of people. Well, my name is DeMarcus and I grew up in the hood. So if you give me a question about horseback riding, I don't know shit about horseback riding. I grew up in the hood, right? So the privileges and things like that they may have, I don't have. So you're trying to standardize unstandardized people. You know what I'm saying? Little Billy across the street, I think, Damon, you brought this point up. If Little Billy across the railroad track get caught with drugs, they're going to send Little Billy to rehab because he has an issue, right? He has a mental issue. It's a medical issue. But Little DeMarcus from the hood, if he get caught with an ounce of weed, we're not going to rehabilitate him. We're going to send him to a false correctional facility, right? You're going to lock me up. So we got to really reimagine schools. Like, I really hope we don't miss this moment. And I feel like I'm afraid that we are. I'm so afraid that we're going to miss this moment, that we're going to say, oh, this is just a moment and not a movement. We got to make this a movement.
Right.
The thing that really ticks me off is when a white person commits the same crime as, as like Dr. Demetrius and Damian said, did the same crime, but in a different ending.
Yeah.
And that's really ticked me off. Like, how does that person gets a year in probation, but another person gets like 5 years in prison. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that person should get 5 years of prison. Like, why does he has to get a year and be out the next day? Like, come on now.
Yeah, Andrew, I was going to add too. Andrew, I don't believe the system is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to come to the realization the system is doing exactly what it was created to do.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
The system is not broken. I think white supremacy, we have to give it to these people. They're very smart. They're very, very smart. Look at the Constitution, right? The Constitution written all these years ago, and it's 2020. We're still following it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't think about just redoing it, right? We keep putting band-aids on it. That's what an amendment is, right? An amendment is just an addendum or what I'm gonna consider to be a band-aid over something that they consider is broken. I don't believe that the system is broken. I believe it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. That's why I'm saying we just have to reimagine the whole thing. If we're gonna revolt, let's revolt. Let's do it. Like, let's go ahead and say, no, we're no longer gonna put our children in these schools. We're going to create our own schools. We're going to educate our children. We're going to start doing stuff radically, because with this moment calls for radical change. I think little Billy across the street who lives in whatever neighborhood, I think his system is totally for him and totally against me. So it's not about people breaking the law. It's about the law breaking the people.
Yeah. Before we end this, I just want to ask this, and this has been on my mind lately, and I did an episode talking about this. What do you guys think of people right now being silent during this time of just everything with the Black Lives Matter protesting? What do y'all think of people just being absolutely silent and not speaking up?
I think absolute silence is complicity in what's happening now, and you're fine with it. And if you're not, then you need to use your voice. But I will say that I don't believe that activism is cookie cutter. So I don't believe that. I'm a person who, I love conversation. I love learning for the sake of learning. So I'm always willing to step into conversations where people may push back on my own mindsets, where people may, offer new pieces, and I'm allowed to kind of formulate my new thinking based on that. But I think we can't expect every single person to do it the same exact way, and we also don't need that. When you think of a body, when you think of the human body and the organs that do their specific jobs for the good of the entire body, your heart doesn't beat for itself, and your mind doesn't operate all of these other things just for itself. It has to sustain the entire body. So I think activism, I think standing up, I think fighting for social justice, being in the fight. Some people are going to march, and I saw, I forget his last name. Y'all two shouldn't be watching Insecure, but for the adults, but he plays Nathan on Insecure. But he was protesting, and he said protests are the way that we show our numbers. And so he said these thousands of people are showing them that we got Black lives back, regardless if we're Black ourselves. And so, some people are going to march, some people are going to protest. We have clergymen that are going to speak the word. We have academics who are going to write, who are going to, go and speak with policymakers. We have senators, we have representatives that, they all play their part for the whole of the body. And so, absolute silence to me is complicity, or, you're blinded in some way, and we need to, enlighten you in some way. But I think that we have to realize that we can't put, this is the image of an activist, this is the image of a change agent, because at the end of the day, someone may be a lawyer in a courtroom that can't step into a classroom and do what they need to do. We each have to play our part in the way that it comes. And some people are searching for their place. And so it's not our job to condemn people who don't do it the way that we think they should. We have to guide and open up opportunity and access to, hey, this organization is focused on this facet, this organization is focused on that facet. And if then they choose to do nothing, then that's someone that we will still fight for, but knowing that they ain't for the cause. You know, when I say Black Lives Matter, I mean all Black lives. So even the ones that, you know, right now may not be doing what I would hope that they would be doing. But yeah, there's steps to it, and there's a way that you have to reflect on your own perception of what activism is.
Yeah. So that's a wrap for this conversation. I want to thank you guys for joining me of having this conversation. Really appreciate it. And to hearing from what y'all are feeling about this. Like I said, I learned a lot from you guys. So thank you for sharing what y'all have to say here. So is there any way, because I like to do this on my show, is there any way that people can be in touch with you with what project and stuff that you guys are working on? Where can people follow you at?
Okay, well, for me, I am on Twitter. I don't even know my Twitter name, though. It's Dr. Mac and a whole bunch of numbers. I didn't know when I created Twitter, I didn't know what I was doing. But just look for Dr. DeMarcus McMillan on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm really vocal on Facebook. If you find me on Facebook, DeMarcus McMillan. And I'm currently right now working on a book called I Can't Breathe. The Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness of Black Men in America. Yeah, so I've been working on that, and my goal is to hopefully have it published on the anniversary of George Floyd's death. So I'm working really hard on that. And I'm also, I don't know if everybody know this, I am a dean of students in the Washington, D.C. school system.
Right.
You can find me at coach_DJ12. I do coach girls basketball. I teach U.S. history at Zerapath Academy here in Jacksonville, Florida. And right now we're getting ready to put on a basketball camp for undersigned seniors. And we're going to bring out HBCUs from the SWAC and the MEAC so that they can sign our young men and young women. So that's what we're working on right now.
Right.
First, I just want to say Aggie Pride because I saw my brother with the A&T.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I've been holding it in to the end. But also, I want to commend both Damian and Andrew. Again, as an educator, one who feels like he pours his heart into his Black males, to see the youth continuing to push the envelope and to spread the message, that's really commendable.
Thank you.
You can find me at Morrison Thinks. That's my last name, Thinks, on Twitter. I have 2 podcasts. Morrison Thinks podcast is kind of the more personal one where I have this candid talks about how I feel about things. Also the To Be Continued podcast with my friend Brandon. Yes, we have the same name. But yeah, so I just wanted to again commend you too, and thank you for the opportunity. It was a great moment to just hear knowledge from other people. I love absorbing knowledge, and it's not often that we get to be Black men in a conversation where I can just sit back and just pull in the knowledge and just learn more. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I guess I'm Wes. You can follow me on Twitter at Darren, DAREN_Frett, and on my Instagram page, it's Andrew Frett. I think many of you have already know that I am the co-host of Future Educators Talk and the host of Fresh Education Thoughts. We're working on our season our 4th season of Future Education Talk, which is our anniversary month. So we are working on that. And then I am working on, hopefully I'm working on the other broadcasts as well in the coming months.
All right. Yes. Me and Andrew, we are trying to be the change for the world right now, doing this at this very young age. So we are just trying, doing our best. So thank you guys for tuning in, joining me today. It was great. And I will be in touch with you all for hopefully I want to do this again. So I will keep in touch with you all. So thanks for joining today, and y'all take care.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Y'all take care.
Y'all,
take care.
you too. You too.
So that was that episode, you guys. So thank you to my amazing and good friend Andrew Frett for holding it down with me. As I forgot to mention at the beginning, y'all, he was my guest co-host alongside with me, so I thank him. And then I also thank my amazing guests I had on, Mr. Brandon Morrison, Mr. Luther Funches, and Dr. DeMarcus McMillan. So thank you guys for joining me and having this conversation of what it means to be a Black man in America. So like I have been saying a lot, we are the change. We are the change. We need to have, and listen closely, guys, we need to have these difficult conversations with ourselves first in order for us to educate ourselves before we can educate others. Okay? So we have to have these difficult conversations with ourselves before we have it with other people. Because if you don't get educated with yourself about what you're trying to say, then how in the world can you have a deeply conversation with the people that you're trying to educate, and you are giving out false information and not being correct at all? So you be educated first, you guys. Be educated first. Just come on. It's not that hard. Educate yourself about what's happening with the world, with Black Lives Matter, with racism, racist justice, with George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, so many more others. You guys get educated first before you can educate others. And then also, you guys, I forgot to mention into the conversation about being silent. And y'all will be hearing this in an upcoming episode of Damian Talks Education, in several of Damian Talk Education, of where I'm saying, if you are being silent right now, and I'm trying not to shake this my laptop right now, but if you are being silent right now, you're not talking, you're not speaking up about the issues of what's currently happening in the world, about racism, Black Lives Matter, the movement and all. If you are being silent and you are sitting around and you see videos like I showed earlier, if you see videos like that and you are not interested in that, about how can we stop this from happening, you're not being a change for it, then guess what, my friend? I shouldn't be calling you my friend, because you're not, because listen closely. You are a miserable and horrible person, because you, listen, You are the one who are allowing this to keep on happening over and over and over. If you want racism to stop, if you want it to stop, do something about it. Don't just sit your butt around and doing absolutely nothing, saying this is not my issue, this doesn't concern me. Yes, it does. It does concern you. If you want racism to end and for all of Americans to get along with each other and love one another and be kind to one another and treat others right, do something about it. Speak up when you see something that's happening into your community or into others' communities. Speak up about it. Record the action, record the evidence so it can be justified, so it can be solved. It will not be a problem no more because of people like you who are doing something about it. So please, you guys, I can't stress this enough. And some people may not agree with what I'm saying, but I'm speaking the truth. This is what I am deeply feeling. If you want something to change, be the problem solver. Get involved. Do something about it. Because if not, then guess what? It's going to keep on happening over and over and over again. And it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop until we all end it ourselves. Okay? So it's not going to stop until we all end it ourselves. That's my feeling. That is what I am deeply feeling, you guys. So, yeah. So get involved, speak up, use your voice because your voice matters. It does. My voice matters. Your voice matters. So again, thank you for tuning in for this special episode of Damian Talks Education with Damian Hears You, a conversation on being a Black man in America. You can make sure you share this out with your friends, with your family, with your coworkers, everybody, so they can see this conversation of some amazing Black males having this conversation together and hear each other out. So make sure you guys you follow and subscribe to Damian Talks Education wherever you listen to your favorite podcast at. I'm available everywhere, so just search me, search Damian Talks Education to any podcast platforms, and there you go. And make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Damian Talks Education, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode, which drops every Fridays. And leave a review on Apple Podcasts because I will be reading all your comments of how you enjoy my podcast. If you love it, if you hate it, if I should do something about it, whatever, just leave your comments there and I will read it and I will gladly respond back to them. Also, follow Damian Talks. I'm almost finished, you guys. Follow Damian Talks Education on social media, on Instagram and Twitter at Damian Talks EDU, and then on Facebook at Damian Talks Education or EDU. Can't remember, but yeah, I'm there. So, and also you can follow me on my personal accounts on Instagram at Damian Anderson. That's at Damian Anderson, and on Twitter at _Damian Anderson. So thank you guys for tuning in for this powerful conversation. I'll see you guys back on the next episode of Damian Talks Education. Remember, take care of yourself, be safe, and speak up. Use your voice. If you see something, record the action, record the evidence. Take care. Hello, everyone. Damian Anderson here. If you have a question, concerns about Damian Talks Education, stories to share with me, any feedback to share, reactions to the topics that I talk about, jokes to tell, or someone you will like for me to interview, please let me know by direct messaging me on Instagram and Twitter at Damian Talks EDU, on Facebook at Damian Talks Education. You can email me at educationthoughtspodcast@gmail.com or send in a voice message to me by going to anchor.fm/Damian Talks Education, and make sure you click on the message tab to where you can record your questions into me. Thanks so much.